Brought to you by CGTN Europe.
Welcome to the Agenda podcast. I'm Stephen Cole. Personal data is big money in the modern world, and companies like Facebook and Google are making big money from selling it. But the data extracted from us, the consumers, often disappears to places we know very little about. In this episode, we take a look at personal data to determine how what we share in the digital world can have a very real impact on our everyday lives. Now, for more on this, I spoke to Dr. Jennifer Pybus, who is a lecturer in digital culture and society at King's College London. And I began by asking her whether people should be concerned about how much of their information is out there online.
On the one hand, it's good to remember that data in itself is neutral. So you can look at really interesting research done, for example, by Dr. Jennifer Gabrice at Cambridge University, where she's teaching people how to make data, and they've been very successful about documenting air quality around Goldsmith University. On the other hand, when we start to think about the ways in which large corporations, GAFAM, as they're usually called here, so Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, they're using our data in a very different way. And I think this causes a lot of anxiety for good reason, because we're not entirely sure how this is transpiring.
They're using our data in a very different way. What is that different way?
For one, know who we are. Why do they want to know who we are? They want to know who we are because their entire economic model is predicated around trying to advertise to us. So we can advertise cars, we can advertise ideas, and now we can advertise politicians. And the only way in which we can start to do this with increasing precision so that people will be more affected by the content that's coming to them is to get a greater sense of knowing them. And I think this is one of the problems, because when we're knowing in a part through the web, through their platforms, so what we are putting as links and pictures, but they're also knowing us when we just go on the internet, because they act as trackers sitting behind. So maybe we're on the Guardian newspaper, where we are. They're seeing where we're going and what we're interested in. And now increasingly they're knowing us through our phones, because we're not just looking at the information on our apps, but they're looking at our contacts and our locations and maybe our microphones.
So who is buying and selling all this data?
It's very complicated. We can say at the top of the pile we have Google and Facebook. So we can see this just from their revenue. So advertising revenue,
which are huge,
which is massive. So for Google last year, 2018, just the advertising revenue was $136 billion US dollars, and Facebook $54 billion dollars.
And in the UK and Europe, they tend to not pay very much tax either.
No, they don't pay a lot of tax, but they're making a lot of money from, and that money is currency based on us. So that's based on a promise to people that are going to come to them and say, we want to be able to target Jennifer because we know she likes doing this, that, and the other. So how do we get to her? Yeah. And they say, yeah, we will take your money and we will definitely deliver this type of person so that you can reach them.
And that, of course, includes Facebook, which some people might join because they want to be friends with other people. But in effect, Facebook is purely an advertising company.
Absolutely. And I don't think we should have any bones about it. And I would also go to say that Facebook is not just an advertising company, it's a data tracking company. So if we peel back the layers and look under the hood of the websites that we visit or the apps that we download, we're always going to see Google and Facebook there.
So they build up this data bank on each one of us, and then they sell that information to the advertisers. Is that how it works?
Yes. So they don't necessarily sell the information to the advertisers per se. They sell groups of people to the advertisers. They sell analytics. So, for example, they have different products that they have. So if you want to see how are people doing when they come to my website, where are they looking, where are they seeing, they'll sell services that you can kind of measure to see if you're being successful. They will sell actually the production of ads themselves, all these kinds of services.
Do you think targeted advertising is, in fact, good for the consumer?
I think that it's something that we haven't encountered in this particular manifestation. So there's always been advertising, and some people might roll their eyes and say, well, it's just advertising, it's always been here, it's always been the same. But I think we need to take a step back and think about, well, what is different about what it is that they're doing? So initially, advertisers have always gone in search of content. They've gone in search of content because that's where audiences are. So you go to the newspaper because they have people reading certain things. You ask them if we can have access to your audience. They say, yes, give us money. We put an ad there. So now when we look at Google and Facebook, they're kind of they're leapfrogging over that content and say, actually, we're going to make the content too, because we make the content and we bring the user. So that's one thing that's changed. The other thing is, before it used to be one ad for everyone, the sort of old mass media model. Now it's increasingly one ad for you.
One man who is helping protect companies from dangerous cyber crooks is Ralph Echemendia, also known as the ethical hacker. As one of the highest paid people in the IT industry, he's worked with many organizations from NASA to Hollywood. And I began by asking him what it means to be an ethical hacker.
Well, that has much to do with sort of my background and sort of how I came up in this world of computer hacking. And it was actually students of mine who came up with throwing that term around. It had to do with how I chose to sort of do or not do certain things that came my way. And so they kind of gave me that name, the ethical hacker, and choosing to do the right things.
Can a company, can an individual ever be completely safe from hackers?
No. There is no such thing as 100% security. And I'd like to put it this way, there's no such thing in the physical world. So we shouldn't believe that exists in the virtual world, in the digital world. And that's one of the big issues, is that we tend to, if you think of the word virtual, the opposite of the word is physical. And so the truth is, our physical world is so impacted by the virtual world, by the digital world, that we no longer really live in a purely physical world. Our entire lives depend on data, on digital. So we don't even really exist without it in so many different ways. And we haven't really connected that. Most people around the world, and even companies, they still kind of deal with this as if it were a technology issue. And the truth is, it's not. It's a human issue. Everything that we've built, technologically speaking, is also based on or built by a human. So it's going to be flawed.
One of the biggest worries at the moment in Europe, and I think as well as in America, is political hacking. Do you believe political hacking has had an influence in past elections, either in America or in Europe?
There's no doubt about it. And we are only hearing about it now, right? And only in these previous elections are we really making this, come to the forefront, and the media covering it. The truth is, influence from the perspective of the digital landscape in the political realm has existed since the digital realm has been used within any government. So we're just now starting to realize and see just how much impact it has on our decision-making process. And obviously with the elections here and elections in the UK and throughout the world, this has now become a matter that we are aware of. But it certainly has been going on for longer than we're aware of.
What is the most frequent target you come across? Is it financial or is it for information data? Data
is valuable, right? And even if you or anyone or everyone's data is valuable, as we've seen some of the largest companies in the world, i.e. Facebook and the likes, are so valuable because of the data they have, right? So it isn't necessarily about stealing your money and making a transaction happen. The data itself is valuable to be sold and resold and so on and so forth. So whether legally or illegally. So now it's really all about data, and we are all pieces of data that have value.
And finally, Ralph, and briefly, is there any particular advice you would give to either just ordinary people or companies that would prevent them from losing their data?
The main thing is just kind of be aware. Certainly things like simple things like use long passwords. I tend to say use a phrase. But again, these are just one element of many things that are moving on. You could be doing everything yourself to be as secure as you can, but a company that you deal with gets hacked and then your information's out there. So it's really something that we have to collectively be aware of.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of The Agenda. If you'd like to hear more from us, you can subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify. You can also give us feedback with a review. Remember, you can also find The Agenda on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Just search for CGTN Europe. Until next time, goodbye.
The most interesting questions.
Are there other living beings beyond Earth?
Will man or machine be in charge?
Great question.
Always have more than one answer.
Well, hold on, let me just draw up a list.
And always come from more than one person.
That's where the credibility lies.
The concept of having a machinery which is alive and evolving didn't wait for us.
The end of inequality of incomes and wealth around the world, can you imagine how difficult that is at the moment to achieve?
Every episode, Stephen Cole, Murray Beveridge, and some of the brightest minds out there shed light on the answers to some of the most intriguing questions.
There are two ways of looking at this.
Machines can't really discriminate between civilian and military targets.
The Answers Project.
Maybe we need to just look at this in a bit more detail.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
The Answers Project, a new podcast from CGTN Europe.